Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast today. I got really two special guests today. Two people who really don't even need an introduction. Have Brandon Toombs and Becky Murray. Brandon, you have your YouTube series, and I think you got thousands of followers. The work you've done with SuccessFactors has been nothing short of amazing. And Becky, you've been a guest on my podcast before. It's actually the second most popular episode I've ever had. And I gotten a lot of positive feedback on that. The crazy thing is, the last time we spoke, I thought it was when Employee Central passed 5,000 customers, but it was actually 4,000. So crazy how fast time flies. And now we're here where Employee Central has crossed 6,000. And that was kind of the basis for, I was like, you know what, let's do another podcast. And who better to add than Brandon to the podcast. So thank you both for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is like being invited to the All-Star team, getting to go on this podcast. So I'm pretty excited. I'll do my best.
I'm sure you'll do great, Brandon. So, I think we have a fair amount of things we want to cover today. Brandon, I know you were thinking about something too, right? About some of the history of Employee Central Payroll.
Yeah. So I thought that since just to kind of turn the tables around a little bit, since I know that Becky was around a lot early on with Employee Central, even though she has an SAP background, somehow she figured out before us and even before SAP that SuccessFactors and Employee Central was going to be a big thing. And so she made her way over to that side pretty early on. And I wanted to see if we could get her thoughts on just Employee Central, the origins of it and how it's changed over time. And then Imran, I know that you would probably have a pretty good insight on the companion, which is Employee Central Payroll. So that would be something that I would be really interested in. I don't know if anybody else is. I'm just kind of a person, but these are things that I would love to hear a little bit more about. So what do we say? Let's attack Employee Central first. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Becky, I'm going to put you on the spot here.
All right.
So when did you get involved in Employee Central? Where was it at in its life cycle? And talk about the company and everything back then.
Great question. So I can only take you as far back as I go. There's a little bit before then, but I'll try to cover what I know. I started working with Employee Central January or February of 2012. So just before SAP acquired SuccessFactors, a colleague and I kind of got a heads up that was, probably in the pipeline and coming down the SAP cycle of things.
Now, can I ask how you got that information up front? Because obviously you're way more connected than I ever have been.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to answer that question.
Come on, Becky. All right, we'll continue.
All right, insider information. Well, we kind of got wind that SAP was examining SuccessFactors as an acquisition. And so we kind of made the move, put our, our eggs in that basket. And sure enough, shortly thereafter, SAP did acquire SuccessFactors. At the time, Employee Central, which it was called then, was just finishing up a large-scale migration of all of their previous Employee Central customers who were on what at the time was called version 1 onto version 2. Which is currently the version that we're on, although we just call it Employee Central, not version 2. But there was a whole legacy layer of customers that were running a prior iteration of Employee Central. And really, it was more of an enhanced employee profile type view. It didn't have things like effective dating. It didn't have the actions and transactions and things that we're used to seeing today. So it was more of like a top of stack master data record. Built out, just a little bit more than the basic profile, holding a few other different data elements. And so some of the first work that I did was actually to migrate the last few remaining stragglers from that platform onto the Employee Central as we know it today, although it certainly evolved over the past, 12 years since then as well. So when I first started working with this current Employee Central environment, it didn't have things like the MDF objects and the MDF layer. Position management was not a thing. Time was not a thing. Benefits not a thing. It was more so focused on the master data record. It was effective dated for things like personal information, job, and comp, similar to today. So we did have those items. All the configuration and setup was done in the old, the data models, the XML data files. So you'd export those and, make your changes in a configuration editor, or I use Notepad, to be honest, for quite a bit of it. And then you'd load that back up into provisioning, like many of us started out doing. It was all done exclusively there at that point in time. And there were, not as many fields available for custom objects and custom data fields and things like that. So it's evolved quite a bit, with the incorporation of the MDF layer. The first thing that was released there was position management. We didn't even call it, the MDF layer at the time. It was just position management. It turns out it was built on that layer. And then we started rolling out some additional things. But because we didn't have the ability to create custom objects, we just kind of had custom fields and custom elements that we could use. We got pretty creative. I had one customer where I built out a full pay structure for them before pay structure was a thing, so that they could do their sliding scale pay increases based on job level and tied to unions and things like that, just through a series of custom tables and then custom data fields that reference that. So we could actually do quite a lot. But now, of course, so much is standard delivered and available to use. We don't have to go quite to those extremes anymore.
I noticed you've said we a lot. Was it at
that
point?
The people who worked in
right.
SuccessFactors at the time. It was actually mostly SuccessFactors. There were one or two partners that had folks that configured Employee Central. But at the time, and this was unbeknownst to me, to get training, which everyone had to go through in order to work in the system, you had to be a SuccessFactors employee to go through the Employee Central training, because it was so code-based at the time. Not code-based, that's not the right word, but you were modifying code snippets and things like that. And I had contacted the director of training at the time and said I needed to be put into a class for EC because I was prepping for a project we were bidding on at the time. And I think for some reason he thought I worked for SuccessFactors, and so he put me in the class. And it's not until afterwards that he realized that I was a partner and should not have been in that internal training. But nonetheless, I graduated and got my little certification to implement SuccessFactors. So for a while, outside of one or two core partners where they did some training directly with SuccessFactors themselves, I was one of the first few outside of SuccessFactors to configure and implement Employee Central.
And also became trainer extraordinaire very early on.
I taught mastery classes
yes.
alongside the SAP Academy instructors, because EC was so new then. Not a lot of people had any background or understanding. I also taught quite a few consultants who got their start going through the mastery classes, including our own Brandon Toombs here.
Yes. I flunked out of the class, but I've still gotten projects.
I gave him the pass at the end, right?
That's right.
Well, it was a lot harder then, to be honest. We had not in person, they were all virtual, but live training sessions we had to go to for several weeks on end, multiple times a week. And there were projects that we had to work on. So you actually had to go in and configure and set up and demonstrate practical hands-on knowledge of all the areas we covered. So it was pretty comprehensive at that point in time.
So just to fast forward a little bit, I would do this for hours, but I have a feeling that a podcast format really doesn't allow for that. So just talk about what all has changed in the pace of change that you've seen over the past few years as the product has evolved. I mean, it's kind of, in my view, from what I've seen it's become a challenge because as the install base grows larger, you can't make those radical shifts quite as easily.
Yeah.
But you are able to layer on more complexity as you go. So just talk about what you've seen over the intervening period.
That's a great point, Brandon. I think when SAP kind of acquired SuccessFactors and then became more involved in the product development and the road mapping and ultimately took ownership of those pieces, I feel like Employee Central went from being a core HRIS system that helped support the really robust talent solutions that SuccessFactors had to offer, to really kind of flipping it a little bit, where it became, a very core and strategic HRIS solution that has now allowed organizations just to become more strategic in how they approach HR and people management. So I feel like it's become really more of a core or central component of the overall solution. Whereas before, it definitely was an important part. But at the time, things like performance management and compensation and LMS were really some of the front runners that we saw. Now I think, Employee Central has definitely become the beating heart of the solution itself, and adding in things like time and benefits and payroll, adding in the NDF layer to be able to put in more customer specific requirements has really just elevated the solution as a whole. And a lot of work to make it more flexible and adaptable, but also to kind of fit into the existing SAP landscape. So adopting like the concept of the position management itself, which was not, initially included, allowing for some more flexibility at the enterprise org structure level, those types of things have certainly helped to kind of catapult it into its prominent position today.
With 6,000 installs now.
I know, it's incredible. Yeah. It's just amazing. It's so exciting to see, to be quite honest. And I truly believe that it's a good solution for just about every company out there. I've got one customer who, when they started, had 19 employees. And of course, Imran can give us the roster of folks with, several 100,000 employees, but it can just, span the appeal of organizations large and small, and really just help meet people where they are. And I think that's why the numbers are so high and the adoption is so great.
All right, Imran, now it's time to put you on the spot to talk about Employee Central Payroll, which of course is very much a companion to Employee Central. Tell us from your perspective what you've seen in the evolution in, first of all, the idea behind Employee Central Payroll, and then what it's evolved to. Because I'll say very obvious point, which is that Employee Central Payroll just keeps getting better and better every release, in as far as what you're getting baked into that solution. So
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was enjoying that. I thought, I could get away with maybe just letting you two talk, and that'd be good. That was awesome. But all right, so
allow us to hijack your podcast, Imran.
That's right.
Gladly. Yeah, I would just sit here and listen. Actually, it was awesome. But okay, so with ECP, it was initially launched, I want to say 2012, so somewhere around that time, right around the acquisition also of SuccessFactors, so 2013, somewhere around there. So I got involved probably a couple years later, so not right at the launch. And yeah, this is controversial, but at the beginning, I have to be honest, I was a little skeptical of it, right? I mean, obviously I knew the power of SAP's payroll, had worked on it and supported it and implemented it. And, I saw that there was certainly a possibility there, right? Because there were a lot of companies that, could make use of SAP's payroll, because, size does not always dictate complexity either, right? You could have a mid-market company that's super, super complicated, and Absolutely. They need a complicated payroll, and they didn't have a lot of options. And so, those mid-market companies, they clearly didn't want to be in the data center business, right? And so to take the power of SAP's, big global payroll, and then be able to, put it in the cloud, and then not only that, but offer AMS services on top of it. I clearly saw that, but I was at the same time still a little bit skeptical of, okay, is this a big enough target market demand? And then, early on, there was not a big differentiator or much of a differentiator at all with, just the EC with SAP Payroll. But that has changed so much over the last years, right? Like if you remember at the beginning, it was integrated with Boomi, right? So you had to have the middleware layer, and you had to set that up. Whereas if you look at it now and today, you have the point-to-point integration, which is easier to set up, easier to maintain. And I think there's even some data that we've done that it's, from a performance standpoint, 2 times faster. And with ECP, there's now customers, up over 400,000 employees using it productively. And I don't think I could have necessarily imagined that at the beginning, right? The whole process of the integration, what that looked like. And now you see more and more features and functionalities that is unique to ECP, right? Because ECP does have its own set of product managers. They work on specific things for that. So it is a deployment of payroll that's more standardized too, right? And I think that's a very positive thing for customers. And and you can look at it different ways, but if you look at it like with the on-premise payroll days, oftentimes you are in the same system as finance and supply chain and the whole ERP, whereas this payroll actually has the ability to update the system when it makes sense for them. So, I think all of that is a very, very positive thing. And it's been amazing to see, the growth of that, right? And you start with just a few countries and, you have to continue localizing it and where's your demand in different areas and what countries and do have adoption in. And now to see that right at the same time of Employee Central reaching 6,000 for ECP to localize 50 countries. And then, since then we've commercialized a process can add their own countries to it, and we have all these add-ons in the store, and there's a lot of things that have really evolved over that time, and I don't think I could have really imagined it there. So it's been awesome to be part of that journey and kind of see it firsthand. And we have such a great ecosystem of partners, people like yourselves that help customers be successful with it. And now, we do see ECP customers around the 1,000, 1,500, or with our partner managed cloud, even below that. So it's super cool. And I never could have imagined that we would have payroll customers using ECP, of that size and scale. And then the other thing that I think other dynamic of that was, you have to look at it and see, okay, so part of it is, you could go and build a brand new payroll system too, but that's not something that you do very, very quickly. No one does that quickly, especially if you think of building an enterprise-ready payroll like what SAP has today, right? And so, that's a daunting task. It takes a lot of time. And, I actually have this conversation a fair amount with people. Like, there is a lot of venture capital money coming into HR tech and also payroll, but from my point of view, it's all coming around the fringes of payroll. So it's coming into earned wage access, it's coming into financial wellness, and it's coming into probably, small market payroll. But my question, and I'd be open to have a conversation with anyone about this, even if it's a listener, is like, who is building the next enterprise payroll? And there's only a few people, a few companies in the entire world. And then not only that, who's building next global enterprise payroll for the next 30, 40, 50 years, right? And so, I'm not going to divert this conversation to talk about, SAP's new payroll or anything like that, but, that's going to take time to really get to the maturity of ECP, and they're going to work together and all of that. But I think it's been an awesome ride to kind of see ECP and what it's become today. I'm obviously a big fan now, even though I was kind of skeptical at the beginning.
Yeah. I'll echo that. Not that I was skeptical at the beginning. I just, for me, it was just kind of the same thing, just in a different location. And then, Imran, I think you were one of the first people to show me maybe the Payroll Control Center, which was, I think, initially designed for ECP. Of course, we have on-premise customers who run it as well, who've adopted it. But really just the effort that went into that overlay to bring some like new and different experience and to bring just kind of a new way of engaging with the system, really for me just kind of flipped the switch that like, okay, this is going to be something different. This is going to be something that provides value in a different sort of way from what we've seen in the past. And that for me was kind of a turning point, I think. with really getting on board the adoption train of EC Payroll, however many years ago that was. And then to your point, since then, it's really just taken off and evolved in ways I don't know that we could have predicted at the time, but really fantastic options for folks out there now.
Yeah, for sure. And you bring up an interesting point too, right, with the payroll control center. And you're right, on-premise customers can use it, but it was an important thing to have that there, have it integrated directly into Employee Central in the same UI, same UX, right, and be able to process payroll. And it wasn't just about a better looking UI or UX. It was actually fundamentally running payroll differently, right? Moving the work from our reactive, okay, now we're ready to run payroll and we have to get the checks or direct deposit files out tomorrow. And so instead of running payroll, auditing everything at that time, running reports and being in this huge time crunch, it was a fundamental shift to, hey, let's do it differently. And this was actually, keep in mind, before, that became a little more common of people looking at it that way, of let's do it proactively from the first day of the period or throughout the period, let's audit it. And so, I think that was a big differentiator, and it's improved quite a bit now, right, with some of the things now where you can do configuration more similar to a business rules engine in Employee Central. So I completely agree with that.
Where did that mindset change come from? How did y'all get to that? Because one of the nice things about having you on here is that you can kind of talk a little bit from an insider's point of view on what it's been like. Who had the ideas, or how did you come up together as I'm always curious about the creative process within SAP as far as like how you decide, how to spend the scarce assets in order to make things better. What was that process like in order to get that mindset change?
Well, the funny thing is, it was at a completely different time, too, and obviously ECP was, a part of the driver behind it, but the other part of it was the whole dynamic of HANA, actually, right? And what are some of the possibilities that you have with that? And so that just got created, if nothing else, thought processes around this, right? Because I mean, when you look at payroll and how it was originally architected, right? It was in cluster tables, right? And that seems weird to anyone who's thinking about that today. But back then, right, database size really mattered, right? You didn't have what you have now where X terabytes of data, and I can go buy a flash drive with, for super cheap for that space. So, like with the architecture of it being in clusters and how it runs, and I think both of you know that, because it being in clusters and not in transparent tables, that means it's not super easy to read that or run SQL queries and just pull things out so you can kind of go and check things. So, there were conversations around, okay, how can we do this better? And that kind of spurred more conversations. There's a lot of colleagues that deserve a lot of credit for that. And, across our product team and globalization services, one of my favorite colleagues, Michael, he was really involved in that, and even to this day, I mean, Michael's amazing. He is visionary. He's like the way he goes and evaluates what is possible, right, from a technology standpoint, incorporates that in. I mean, I actually just 2 days ago saw some of the things coming with Payroll Control Center in the future, and I was also blown away by some of the possibilities that are coming there too. So, I think it started with that about, okay, what can we do with this? And then, if you are familiar with how PCC works, it also has regular transparent tables with those payroll results, and that makes things a lot easier in terms of auditing payroll, right? So then how do you do this proactively? Well, those results have to be available, right? So you create them in transparent tables, and then, of course, the whole UX thing. It was a lot of years. There's now different UXs of it that we have evolved, just like Employee Central or other products, and that next iteration of that is coming too. But it was certainly a fun journey to be part of.
Does Michael have a last name, or is it like Ronaldo?
Michael does. Michael Kiesley, out in Germany. He's amazing. He's a low-key kind of guy. He's one of the smartest people I've met, though. All right, Brandon, I'm taking back the podcast.
Yes,
now.
please do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Turn the table.
I can't let you just get off without having to answer anything. So I know you've written quite a bit about it. I've written about it. Becky, you have experience in this area. So yeah, I want to ask you about what are your thoughts on the growing difference between Employee Central and SAP on-premise? Because we still have a lot of customers that are on-premise, thousands and thousands of them. And I know you did that video where you talked about things and workflows and the areas there. But now we're getting into like AI and things like that. What are your thoughts on that in 2024 now?
So as far as what I would say from an Employee Central standpoint, and really just talking about it almost a little bit from the cloud standpoint, just in general, the difference between an on-premise solution versus SAP, versus SuccessFactors. For one thing, of course, with a cloud multi-tenant solution, you can just move so much faster. Every release, you have that whatever is coming in that cycle, you have that available to you. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to adopt to it, but you don't have to go to your basis team and ask them to load in 15 different basis packs in order for you to have access to that. You get access to things right away. I would say that right away. And then as far as like some really cool things from a design standpoint that I love when we're talking about Employee Central, one thing I really love that I think is underexploited is the fact that you position management in Employee Central can really be in employees within Employee Central can be really more in dialogue. Where I for a long time I was part of the SAP HR manager self-service teams in trying to get get managers involved in the process. Well, back then, because of the primacy of the position, and basically the position sent thing, you made changes to the position, and then you go and the employee can adopt that position, and then therefore their information could change. Well, if you're just like moving someone from accountant 1 to accountant 2, that doesn't necessarily make sense to make that a two-step transaction where you have to go create the position update first, then come back over and update the employee. Well, that means that really that's too much work for a manager. Managers can't do that. I mean, that's way too much to expect managers to do. So instead, with the way that SuccessFactors Employee Central works, you can go in and you can update the employee directly. But then guess what? You can have that automatically update the position side as well. So it allows you to do things in a much more kind of intuitive way. Talking about the way things work today. And then, of course, moving forward, as we start getting into an AI world and a chatbot world, and then UIs that probably we really don't even understand what they're going to look like in the future. It's just going to be a lot easier to do that in a cloud-based world than it would be if you were doing this on premise.
Agreed. For me, it's a little bit more about the experience. I feel like the on-premise edition was started as a data collection and management tool for transactional type things. It was a tool initially just designed to be used by, system users like your HR business partners, and then eventually introduced manager desktop. And then we got to manager self-service and employee self-service. Whereas I feel like SuccessFactors was really designed right from the start to be a tool for employees and managers as well as the HR folks. And so it's not just kind of a point of data entry and maintenance. It's really a tool for engagement. And employees and managers can do so much more and get so much more and give so much more with that solution. So for me, it's almost like it's designed for the primary user to be more the employee manager, HR business partner, as opposed to just kind of system or data administrator on the on-premise side. Although certainly there are, self-service capabilities in the on-premise side as well. It's again, a little bit more transactional focused. So I feel like if you're looking to offer a more complete experience for your team members, looking to allow managers to do a little bit more of their own team management and have tools for engagement with their employees, it's, SuccessFactors all the way for me.
Yeah. And you bring up a couple of interesting points, actually. So one of them actually is you guys talked about the experience side, but like how technical it was in SAP HCM. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the chief. Shout out to A. Whalen, right? The chief and the org structure and how all that worked, which was great, but it was so technical to set up. I mean, Brandon, I know you touched on this in your video, and I've touched on it in blogs I did, but the first time, and this is my history with Employee Central. So I started years after Becky, but I actually also was one of the people following in your footsteps, and I ended up teaching the academy course and doing all of that. And so I got to work in the XML at that time, and do the data models, and even that. The funny thing is, when I first started working with those data models, I was like, oh, well, this is kind of technical, but certainly a lot easier than ABAP. And then when we got into MDF, it became even easier and built into the UI. But the one thing that really blew me away when I first did it, which sounds simplistic, and I know Brandon, you've mentioned it, were the workflows.
Yes.
when in on-premise, it was a specialized resource, right?
Yes,
I remember probably
you
like
had a person just for that.
Just for that. And they were expensive people too. I remember,
Yes.
I think maybe our buddy Jeremy Masters might have even been one of the guys that really did that. But I tried it one time. I think it was some, I don't even remember the transaction code, SU something. And I looked at it. I spent probably a couple hours like, what is going on here? And I couldn't figure this out. And all I was trying to do was like a simple workflow for like a leave request. I distinctly remember this to this day, where I was trying to, just have a simple approval and just send it to someone's manager. And I just could not figure this out for the life of me. And then when I first came to SuccessFactors, I was like, wait, that's it? I just pick dynamic group and I can choose this group, or I can just directly have one single field in the UX and go to the manager, and then I just assign this workflow to someone, and I'm done in 30 minutes. I mean, I know it's kind of maybe silly, but that blew me away the first time.
It was kind of just night and day. Like, you didn't need someone to write your workflows. You didn't need someone to write like a report for you, an ABAPer to write a report. You didn't need someone to, set up permissions and roles for you. It was kind of just all right there at your fingertips, and didn't require a PhD in SQL and ABAP to make it happen. So definitely a more user-friendly experience on the setup and administrator side too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the transaction you were looking for was Sweet to Freak, I think is the SAP workflow transaction.
You that's sharp, Brandon. I know you just recalled that one. You probably had to type it in a fair amount, huh?
Yeah, I did.
So going back to another thing you said, Brandon, you talked about how the evolution of the user experience, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that's clearly going on now, you see it across the entire SuccessFactors suite. Obviously, we're focused more on Employee Central here, but you're embedding more processes into other places, right? And so that is Teams. I think SuccessFactors has delivered multiple things across modules where you can, submit a leave request in Teams. What is your thought and perception on that? That's kind of going away from, a user experience to not a user experience. And, I think people call it in the flow of work. I'm already using Microsoft Teams, and I can just do the activity from there. Yeah. What do you think about that?
So it's actually delivering on a requirement that we've had for years and years, which is, as you said, everyone's in Teams, everyone's in Microsoft Office products. I don't know if you remember, but there was a hot minute where there was going to be something, I think it was called Project Mendocino at the time, where there was going to be the ability to create leaves directly out of just the old non-cloud-based Office. But it never really got off the ground because it never could do it. Now we have the capability of doing those things because of the hooks that are being built into Employee Central called quick actions. Basically, you can tell me if I'm oversimplifying things, but basically these hooks are allowing us to leverage or push out more functionality to different places, including Teams, so that you can do things like update employees. Eventually, hopefully, even start positions and things like that, but also create time off requests and things like that, all through Teams. And of course, that's just way more intuitive to managers. They don't want to. You can't expect your managers anymore, or you never could really, to sit through a class to learn how to do HR transactions. First of all, they're only going to do like one a month or at best, and they don't care. That's the thing that people need to keep in mind is managers just don't care. They just want to get this done and get it out of the way. They can be kind of cranky and annoying or annoyed at the process. And so the best thing you can do is make it as simple as possible. Let them do what they need to get done and get out of the way, and do it from a place that they're already used to working with, which is Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Office products.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Becky, do you agree, or I mean, any
I
different point of
agree.
view there?
Absolutely. Nope. Nope.
Okay, sounds good. Then, I think this may be my last question. I know we've probably already gone over what I had originally intended, but you know what? It's in the flow of the conversation, and I love it. So I think it's been great. Let's talk about AI, ChatGPT, Joule. So me, I'm a techie. I see this stuff. I'm super excited about it. Brendan, I know you did a video where you actually did some documentation in ChatGPT and played around with it. So I think you're very much similar, Becky. What I know about you, you love getting in there, trying things out. So I think we are all techies and we love that kind of stuff. And I look at Joule and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. But how
Mm-hmm.
do you actually see it playing out with real HR people that aren't techies like us? Can you even imagine a future where they are creating positions in Joule, or using a chatbot? Or maybe it's more employee focused, because to your point earlier, Brandon, employees and managers do some of these activities so sparingly that maybe a chatbot is really helpful for them because they don't know how to do it, and that can simplify it quite a bit. I mean, what are your thoughts on those two personas, the HR admin and a employee manager actually using that type of functionality? Becky,
Well,
I'll go with you first this time.
okay.
Sorry, Brendan.
Yeah, let her go.
I think like anything, adoption is always going to be a mix, and people are going to move at the pace at which they're comfortable. I think your larger organizations are going to adopt some of these pieces of technology first, just because they'll have the budget and the scale and means to do so. I don't know that we can make any hard or fast predictions outside of that, just because like technology adoption is such a personal thing, and
Sure.
And a lot of it will depend on the investments that organizations make and where they feel as though the needs are. I think there's definitely a very strong use case for embedding, different AI tools, for embedding other different components like Teams into the solution to kind of meet people where they are in terms of the other technology mediums they're used to using. And then, of course, AI tools, when deployed properly and used appropriately, certainly do help with knowledge gaps and with skill gaps and things like that. It might be, a few years before we start to see some broader adoption, but I definitely
Sure.
think it's coming.
Yeah.
A lot of it will come down to, I think, people's appetite for new technology and people's appetites to spend budget on that, of course.
Yeah, makes sense. Brandon, what do you think? I mean, similar line of thoughts or anything you might add?
The one thing I will say is that right now we are more limited by our imagination of what's coming than what is actually coming from a technology standpoint. It's like I would think of it kind of like when the internet came along. I mean, there was no way for us to guess that things like social media would take off and become what they are.
Right.
I think the UI. I think that. My guess, and again, this is just me, just pure conjecture, but I feel like that anything pretty much thinking more than a couple of years in advance is pure conjecture. I think we're going to get away from text chatbots, and it's going to be it's going to be graphically guided things, to where maybe you'll be able to talk to it, and it's going to spin up a picture of here's what this position looks like. Does this look right to you? And it will be maybe it will be the actual Employee Central position that you're looking at, and you'll be able to just click a button and say, yep, that looks right, and it'll go on. In which case, that becomes a completely different discussion if it's drop dead simple and you're not even having to go through any text. You're not even trying to read anything. It's so simple. Maybe that's where it's headed. Maybe it's not. But that's where we're in kind of a uncharted territory here. I do think that it's going to be not just your business, but as you start getting more and more comfortable, and users get more and more comfortable because they're able to get so much done with AI, then it's going to change. It's going to change all aspects of our life, and HR technology will just be a part of it.
Sure. Sure.
And,
Yeah,
and I think at some point your employees will start to have certain expectations. And we saw this when self-service, was a similarly debated topic. Do we trust our employees to update their own address and, request name changes and things like that?
Yeah.
And, like we'll allow the office workers to do it, but not the folks on the floor because they don't have access to the same technology. But nowadays, with everyone having, smart devices and tablets available in community areas, people are just more accustomed to technology. And I think over the next few years, people will start to have expectations around the technology that their employers provide to them, similar to self-service and how that's become just a basic employee tool at most organizations now.
That makes a lot of sense. And, I think obviously SuccessFactors is not exclusive working on this. I think every vendor is working on embedding AI into it. But I think part of the thing that'll be fascinating, it'll be when, having a consistent experience, right? And I wonder if that changes things from, going from best of breed, because, who wants to have to go and deal with 10 different tools and 10 different AI layers as opposed to having something more cohesive. So anyways, probably a conversation for another day. And I think it's probably, well over the time I had scheduled, but I just couldn't get myself to stop. And I've enjoyed this conversation very, very much. Thank you both for coming on, sharing your expertise. And like I said, it was an awesome conversation from my point of view. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Delighted.
Yeah, and I want to apologize up front for this being probably your least listened to podcast.
No,
we're going to edit you out, Brandon, as much as possible.
No, not at all. I imagine this one will be very, very, very popular. I don't know if it could beat the one me and you did, Becky.
Thank you, Imran. Thank you.
I think it'll be great.
The Atlanta Brain Trust right there.
Yeah, go Atlanta.